She spread wild rumors to avoid being claimed, until he saw through them and claimed her heart. Mist curled through the streets of Averin, the ancient capital of a kingdom ruled by kings and queens whose power was as much in magic as in law. Lanterns flickered, casting dancing shadows on the cobblestones, and the sound of distant bells echoed like whispers of forgotten secrets. In the center of this city, in a house draped with ivy and black roses, Lady Alara moved with quiet grace. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, soft as shadow, and her eyes were sharp, always watching, always calculating. To the world she was a noblewoman of beauty and charm, but she had learned long ago that in Averin, charm was often a trap. Alara had grown tired of the way men and women of the court spoke about her as if she were a prize to be won. She had grown tired of the clever words, the flattery, and the constant games of politeness that hid the hunger for power. So she had devised her own strategy. She spread rumors, wild, impossible rumors, stories of reckless nights in hidden forests, of mysterious magic she could summon, of a temperament that could shatter hearts and minds alike. No one dared approach her seriously. They whispered yes, but they feared. That was exactly what she wanted. On this night, a masquerade ball was held at the palace. Velvet banners swayed in the torchlight, and the air was thick with perfume, music, and whispered gossip. Alara's mask covered half her face, black lace and silver filigree, but it could not hide the intelligence in her eyes or the cautious flutter of her pulse as she walked through the grand hall. She knew the eyes of the court were on her, as always. Noblemen bowed and courtesied, their gazes flicking with curiosity and desire. Noblewomen smiled with tight-lipped amusement, as if daring her to slip, to falter, to make herself a target. Alara smiled in return, the smile of someone who had already won the game before it began. And then from across the hall she saw him, Lord Kale, a man whose reputation was whispered in awe and fear alike. Some said he had been touched by magic in his youth, others spoke of battles he had survived that should have ended him. There was power in his presence, quiet but unyielding. Where others sought attention, he seemed to command it without effort. His mask was simple, black velvet, but it could not hide the intensity in his storm-gray eyes. Alara felt a shiver, a warning in her chest she did not yet understand. She had spun stories of her wildness, of how she would resist anyone who dared try to claim her. Yet Kale's gaze cut through every word she had ever whispered. He saw what no one else did. She maneuvered through the crowd, keeping her mask held high, her laughter light and careless, even as her mind raced. She had to be careful. He was dangerous, not because of what he might do, but because he might see through her defenses. Kale approached her slowly, his movements deliberate. Each step was measured, controlled, and yet there was a magnetic pull that seemed to draw her closer despite herself. "Lady Alara," he said, his voice low and smooth, a sound that carried the weight of command and the curiosity of a scholar. "Your reputation precedes you." Alara arched a brow. "And what would my reputation tell you, my lord?" she asked lightly. Her tone was teasing, but beneath it was caution. "That you are untamable," he said, "but also that your masks are clever. Most are fooled, I am not." For a moment, Alara could not respond. No one had ever said such a thing. Most men, most nobles, either ignored her or sought to flatter her. Kale simply stated the truth, and it unsettled her in ways she had not anticipated. She laughed softly, a sound like wind through leaves. "You flatter poorly, my lord," she said. But her heart thumped in her chest despite her words. She had spent her life hiding behind stories, behind rumors, and here was someone who did not need to be convinced by them. Kale's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I do not flatter, Lady Alara, I observe." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of music, dancing, and whispered glances. Alara found herself aware of Kale in every shadow, every reflection in the crystal chandeliers. He never forced conversation, never pressed her. Yet his presence was like a tide she could not resist. It pulled at her defenses and tested them, patient and unrelenting. Later, when the ball was winding down, she slipped into the garden. Moonlight bathed the hedges and fountains in silver, and the air smelled of roses and damp earth. Alara hoped for a moment of peace, but it was short-lived. Kale stepped from the shadows, his cloak brushing the stone path. "You like to hide among stories," he said, not unkindly. "But even stories have truth in them. I wonder, what is the truth about Lady Alara?" Her breath caught. She had thought to keep him guessing, to let him follow the web of her tales. But now he was standing before her, calm and steady, expecting honesty. For the first time in her life, she realized she did not know how to lie to someone who truly saw her. She began, and then faltered. No clever quip, no teasing remark, no wild tale came to mind. For once, the mask felt heavy, and she did not want to wear it. Kale stepped closer, just enough that the silver of his eyes reflected in hers. "Truth is safer than rumor," he said softly. "It does not always shield you, but it frees you." She turned her gaze away, pretending to examine a fountain, though her mind raced. Was it possible to trust a man who could see through every deception? Was it madness to hope that someone could accept her beyond the stories she had spun? As the night deepened, the palace grew quiet, and guests began to depart. Alara returned home through the misty streets, her heart heavy with questions she had no answers to. She unlocked her balcony door and stepped out, the cold night brushing against her cheeks. There, resting on the stone railing, was a single black rose. Its petals shimmered in the moonlight, dark and beautiful, and it carried no scent, only the unspoken message of its presence. Alara's hand hovered above it. She understood immediately. He had seen her. He had understood her masks, and yet he had come anyway. The thought both frightened and thrilled her. She pressed the rose to her chest, feeling the weight of the moment. Her heart, which she had kept so carefully guarded behind stories and rumors, felt as though it might betray her. In the shadows, the mist swirled like ghosts, whispering secrets she had long tried to hide. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, Kale watched, waiting, not with impatience, but with the certainty of someone who knew that some games are not won through lies, but through courage. Alara did not sleep that night. She could not. Every whisper of wind, every rustle of leaves seemed to carry his presence. She wondered if the rumors she had spread, so carefully designed to keep suitors at bay, had brought her exactly the opposite of safety. Morning came pale and gray. The black rose lay on her balcony still, unchanged, a symbol of a challenge she had not yet met. She stared at it for a long time, thinking of the man whose gaze had cut through every tale she had ever told. And deep inside, a tiny, defiant spark of hope flickered, an emotion she had tried to bury beneath her clever tales, beneath her laughter and whispered warnings. Perhaps, she thought, some truths were worth the risk. Perhaps some hearts could not be guarded by lies. Outside, the city of Averin carried on as if nothing had happened. Nobles whispered, servants hurried, and the wind carried secrets through the streets. But inside Lady Alara's heart, the world had already shifted. The game she had played so long was no longer hers alone. Someone else had entered the field. Kale had claimed the first move, not through force, not through conquest, but through understanding, and the realization left her breathless and unsettled. And so in the quiet, misted dawn, a story began, not of scandal or cunning, but of hearts meeting, of masks falling, and of the fragile, dangerous beauty of truth. Somewhere in the kingdom, a black rose waited for the next step. And somewhere beyond the mist, a man watched, and he knew she would not remain hidden forever. The palace of Averin was alive with whispers. Shadows moved in every corner, carrying secrets and rumors that twisted faster than the wind through the tall towers. Lady Alara felt the tension the moment she stepped into the grand hall the next day. Her stories, the wild rumors she had carefully spread, had traveled through the court like wildfire. "Did you hear?" a noblewoman whispered behind her fan, eyes glinting with curiosity. Lady Alara was seen dancing in the moonlight gardens, with shadows that were not entirely human. Alara smiled lightly, keeping her expression calm. She had spun these rumors herself, weaving threads of danger and mystery around her life. They were meant to protect her. They were meant to keep men like suitors or opportunistic nobles from trying to claim her. But now she realized how quickly tales could take on a life of their own. "Foolish women," she muttered under her breath, adjusting the lace of her gown. "They see what they want to see and believe every shadow in the night." But it was not the whispers that worried her most. It was the quiet presence that followed her through the palace, Lord Kale. Kale's reputation was not one built on gossip, yet it carried weight heavier than the loudest of rumors. His eyes, sharp and gray, followed her movements, analyzing her as if he could read the thoughts she had carefully hidden. Unlike others, he did not speak in flattery or threats. He simply existed in the spaces she could not control, and it unnerved her more than any court intrigue ever could. The day brought a summons to the palace gardens, a place of winding paths, shadowed alcoves, and fountains that glittered with the reflection of the morning sun. Alara walked cautiously, aware that every rustle of leaves, every sigh of the wind could carry more than just the sound of nature. It could carry eyes, ears, and intentions that were not her own. Kale stood there, waiting, his posture relaxed, his cloak brushing the marble paths. He did not smile, yet there was a certainty in his stance that both frustrated and intrigued her. "You continue to weave stories," he said without preamble, voice calm, measured. "Do you believe they protect you?" Alara's lips curved in a small, teasing smile. "They do. And they keep the foolish away." Kale's gaze did not waver. "I am not foolish." The words were simple, but they struck deeper than any sharp blade or whispered insult. Alara realized that he meant it, not as a warning, not as a threat, but as a statement of fact. He understood her, perhaps better than she understood herself. She stepped closer, cautious but curious. "Then why do you linger, my lord? Surely a man like you has no need to concern himself with the stories of a woman who refuses to be claimed." Kale tilted his head slightly. "Because I see the truth beneath them, and the truth is rarely what it seems." The wind shifted through the garden, carrying petals from the black roses that climbed the trellises. Alara thought of the rose he had left on her balcony the night before. A single gesture, yet it had unsettled her more than all the whispers of the court. "You are dangerous," she said softly. "Not because of what you do, but because you see me. You see me, and I am not certain I want to be seen." Kale stepped closer, and for the first time their hands brushed as he handed her a folded piece of parchment. She took it cautiously, her fingers trembling slightly. On it were words she had never expected to see, written in his precise hand. "Rumors are shields, but they are also chains. You may hide behind them, but one who sees through will always find you." Alara's pulse quickened. He had seen through her games before she even spoke. And she realized, with a thrill she could not deny, that she had never met anyone who could. That evening, the court grew more restless. Rumors about her grew wilder, fueled by the very stories she had invented. Yet amidst the chaos, Kale's calm presence remained, a constant that made her pulse flutter with anticipation and fear. But danger was not only in whispers. A shadow moved within the court, a subtle threat that no one else noticed. A sorceress, exiled years ago for using forbidden magic, had returned. Her influence was growing quietly, twisting the minds of those who believed her lies and manipulating events for her own purpose. Her name alone sent chills down Alara's spine: Morgana. Alara learned of Morgana's return through a servant who had been careful to speak only when they were alone. "The sorceress seeks someone," the young maid whispered. "She searches for one whose heart is protected by lies, whose trust is fragile. She will test you, my lady." Alara felt a shiver. It was not fear of Morgana herself. It was fear that her carefully constructed walls, her clever stories, might fail when confronted with true danger. And yet, in the midst of that fear, there was a spark of excitement. For the first time, someone was challenging not only her mind but her heart. Kale appeared again that night, standing silently near the edge of the balcony as Alara watched the city lights shimmer below. He spoke without moving his lips, as if the words were carried on the wind. "Curses are not always visible, Lady Alara," he said. "Some are felt only in the heart. Be careful whose shadows you follow, for some may lead to ruin." Alara swallowed hard. There was a truth in his words that she could not ignore. And yet she found herself drawn to the warning, as if danger and desire were intertwined in a way that neither she nor Kale could resist. Days passed, and the tension in the court grew. Alara's rumors had done their job. Nobody dared claim her outright. But Kale did not follow the usual patterns of men who sought power or wealth. He observed, tested, and challenged her, creating a dance of subtle provocation that left her heart racing. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the towers and painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Kale invited Alara to a hidden part of the palace gardens, a place few knew existed, where the fountains whispered secrets of old kings and queens, and shadows clung like memory. "Why do you lead with stories?" he asked quietly, his eyes reflecting the dying light. "What is it you fear?" Alara hesitated. She had never spoken honestly about her fear, even to herself. "I fear being claimed," she admitted softly. "Not for love, not for respect, but because of the power others wish to take from me. I cannot allow that." Kale listened without judgment. His presence was steady, grounding. "Then perhaps it is not others you need to guard against," he said, "but the walls you build around yourself. They protect you, yes, but they also imprison you." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen her beyond the stories she told, and yet here was Kale, seeing, understanding, and waiting for her to decide if she would lower her guard. The first sign of the sorceress's interference arrived that night. A shadow moved in the corridor outside her room. A soft, unnatural chill brushed her skin. A message appeared in her chamber, etched in frost on the mirror. "Truth and lies are one. Choose poorly and hearts will break." Alara's hands trembled. This was no ordinary threat. Morgana's magic was subtle but relentless. And yet, even in the face of danger, Kale's calm presence brought clarity. He did not command, he did not demand. He simply stood with her, a reminder that not all power sought to dominate. That night, as mist curled around the palace towers and stars blinked faintly in the sky, Alara realized that she had begun to rely on him, not for protection alone, but for understanding. He had seen through her masks and in doing so had unsettled the careful balance she had maintained for years. For the first time she wondered, could someone see her fully and yet still care? Could someone claim her heart without breaking it? Kale did not answer with words. He simply left a black rose on her balcony again, petals glistening faintly in the moonlight. Its meaning was clear, though unspoken. He would wait. He would watch. And he would see her, not the stories, not the masks, but the truth beneath. Alara's pulse raced as she touched the delicate petals. She had spent her life spinning tales to protect herself, but now those very tales seemed fragile in the face of someone who understood her entirely. And that understanding was more dangerous than any curse Morgana could cast. The night passed slowly, each tick of the clock a reminder that her carefully constructed world was shifting. Rumors could no longer shield her. Lies could no longer protect her. And in the silence between shadows, she felt something she had not felt in a long time, a fragile, thrilling hope. Somewhere in the palace, Kale watched the same moon, knowing that the next steps would not be taken lightly. The web of shadows had grown, and choices lay ahead that would test not only her cleverness but the courage of her heart. And in that quiet, charged moment, the first threads of a deeper connection were woven, threads of trust, curiosity, and a dangerous, intoxicating desire to be known fully. The story had only begun, and both Lady Alara and Lord Kale knew that the next move could change everything. The The castle of Averin was quiet at first light, yet its halls were filled with a tension no ordinary day could explain. Lady Alara moved through them like a shadow, her senses alert. The warnings of Morgana, the exiled sorceress, had grown more frequent. Messages etched in frost, whispers in the wind, and fleeting shadows that vanished as soon as she turned her head, all signs that danger was near. Alara's heart was restless. She had spent years building walls of rumor and illusion, yet now those walls seemed fragile, meaningless against a threat she could neither see fully nor control. And always, just beyond the reach of her thoughts, was Lord Kale, his presence steady, silent, and unsettling. That morning Kale appeared at the library, his gray eyes as sharp as ever. "We have little time," he said. "Morgana is growing bolder. She will not be content to watch from the shadows for long." Alara frowned, pushing her dark hair from her face. "And what am I supposed to do?" "My stories, my rumors, they cannot protect me here, not against her." Kale studied her, his expression unreadable. "Your stories never were meant to protect against magic. They were meant to shield your heart, but now we must protect both." They were silent for a long moment, the weight of unspoken understanding filling the space between them. Alara realized that she had never before shared such thoughts, even in her own mind. Her heart, always cautious, was learning to trust someone beyond the clever tales she told. The plan was simple in idea, yet dangerous in execution. Morgana had returned to the city with an army of shadows, beings neither fully alive nor fully dead, whose whispers could bend the will of the unwary. To confront her, Alara and Kale would need to venture into the palace catacombs, a labyrinth beneath the city, where magic clung to the walls like damp ivy. As they descended the cold stone steps, the air grew heavier, thick with the scent of earth and ancient secrets. Alara's hand brushed against Kale's for a brief moment, and though it was unintentional, both felt a spark of awareness, a recognition of connection in a place where danger could overwhelm even the bravest heart. The catacombs were dark, lit only by torches that cast trembling shadows along the walls. The echoes of their footsteps were swallowed by the corridors, leaving only the sound of their own breathing and the subtle hum of magic in the stones. "Stay close," Kale warned, his voice low. "She will try to separate us. Morgana thrives on fear, on doubt, on isolation." Alara nodded, gripping the hilt of her dagger more tightly. Fear was not unknown to her, but this was different. This fear was layered with uncertainty, the kind that gnawed at the soul and left one vulnerable. She realized that the very defenses she had built with stories might fail her here. Only trust in Kale and herself, could guide her through. They moved deeper into the labyrinth until they reached a wide chamber. Shadows moved unnaturally along the walls, twisting and stretching as though alive. A voice echoed, soft and melodic, carrying both allure and threat. "You are brave to come here, Lady Alara," Morgana's voice whispered. "But bravery is not enough. Courage alone will not save your precious heart." Alara's chest tightened, yet she met the voice with steady eyes. "I do not fear you," she said. "Not entirely." The shadows coalesced into forms, faint, ghostly figures that floated just above the ground. Some were human in shape, others twisted, unnerving, almost unreal. Kale stepped forward, his hand raised. His eyes glimmered with a light she had never seen before, controlled power, restrained fury. "Stay behind me," he instructed. "Do not speak unless you must. Fear will give her control." Alara nodded, though she was aware that the thought of hiding behind him was no longer enough. She felt the stirrings of courage within her, a desire to face the danger herself, not as a story, not as a mask, but as she truly was. The shadows surged forward, yet Kale moved with precise control, channeling power that shimmered faintly around his hands. Alara's dagger was ready, though she quickly realized that fighting Morgana's shadows required more than steel. It required resolve. She steadied her breath, calling on the confidence that had carried her through years of court intrigue. "You may control shadows," she whispered to herself, "but you cannot control me." Morgana's voice laughed softly, almost amused. "Bold little one. But how long will you last when fear is all that remains?" Kale's gaze flicked to her, steady and grounding. "Together," he said quietly. "Trust me and trust yourself." In that moment, Alara understood that the challenge was not just the shadows, nor Morgana's magic, nor the whispers that sought to weaken her spirit. The challenge was herself, her doubts, her hesitation, her fear of letting someone see her fully. And yet here was Kale, steady beside her, showing her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The shadows surged again, more forceful this time. Alara raised her dagger, feeling an unfamiliar strength settle over her. She did not strike blindly, but with focus, moving in rhythm with Kale's guidance, anticipating the motions of the shadows and countering them with precision. Each moment of action built confidence within her, weaving her courage into a tangible shield. Then Morgana herself appeared, a figure draped in dark silk, her eyes like shards of moonlight, her presence both terrifying and enthralling. She moved with grace, yet her aura was sharp, dangerous. "You have grown stronger," Morgana said, circling them. "But even strength cannot protect what you hold most dear. Tell me, Lady Alara, how far would you go to protect your heart?" Alara's breath caught. For the first time, the words of the sorceress struck not at her body but at her soul. Kale's hand brushed hers briefly, and she felt warmth, steadiness, the promise that she was not alone. "I would go anywhere," Alara said, her voice soft but unwavering. "I would face anything. My heart is mine to guard and mine to choose." Morgana's lips curved in a faint, cruel smile. "We shall see." The battle intensified. Shadows twisted around them, trying to separate them, trying to weaken their resolve. But Alara and Kale moved as one, instinctively, their trust in each other forming a bond stronger than any spell Morgana could cast. In a daring move, Alara stepped forward, confronting Morgana directly. "You underestimate me," she said firmly. "I am not the stories you have heard. I am stronger than whispers, stronger than fear." Morgana's eyes flickered with surprise, an emotion rare for the sorceress who thrived on control. Kale seized the moment, channeling his power to bind the shadows, their movements slowed, restrained by his skill. For a brief moment, the labyrinth was quiet. Only the echo of their breaths remained, mingling with the distant hum of ancient magic. Alara realized, with a thrill she could not suppress, that she had fought not only Morgana's shadows but the shadows within herself, the doubts, the fears, the stories she had clung to. Kale stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers with intensity. "You are stronger than you know," he said quietly, "and braver than you believe." Alara felt her heart stir, a sensation she had long avoided. This was not the thrill of rumors, nor the thrill of intrigue. It was something deeper, something real. A connection that transcended games and masks, a trust that grew from shared danger and understanding. But the victory was fragile. Morgana's laughter echoed through the chamber, faint but ominous. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "The heart is a labyrinth, and not all who enter find their way." Alara shivered, realizing that the sorceress was right. They had survived this encounter, but the dangers were far from over. And yet, as she looked at Kale, standing steady beside her, she felt a surge of hope. Perhaps the labyrinth of the heart could be navigated, not alone but together. When they emerged from the catacombs, the sun had already set, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. The palace was quiet, the court oblivious to the battle that had taken place beneath their feet. Alara looked at Kale, the man who had seen through every mask, every story, every whispered lie, and yet had stood with her, unwavering. "You saved me," she said softly. "No," Kale replied, shaking his head gently. "You saved yourself. I only helped you see it." For the first time, Alara allowed herself to believe it. Not the rumors, not the masks, but her own courage and heart had guided her through the darkness. And in that moment, She realized that Kale had claimed more than her attention. He had claimed her trust, and perhaps something even deeper. That night, as she lay in her chamber, the black rose from earlier still on her balcony, Alara could not sleep. Every shadow seemed alive. Every whisper of wind carried a question she could not answer. She thought of Morgana, the sorceress whose presence lingered like a warning, and of Kale, whose eyes had never left her, even in the depths of danger. Her heart, once shielded by stories and rumors, now beat with a thrilling uncertainty. And she realized that the greatest challenge had only just begun. Not the sorceress, not the shadows, but the journey through her own heart, through trust, desire, and the fragile, dangerous beauty of connection. The sky above Averin was painted in shades of silver and violet as dawn approached, yet the castle remained shrouded in mist. Shadows lingered, curling along the walls like living threads, reminders of Morgana's unseen hand. Lady Alara moved through the corridors with careful steps, her mind sharpened by the dangers she had faced. The labyrinth beneath the city had tested her courage, but the true challenge was still ahead, confronting Morgana and reclaiming not only her heart but Kale's as well. Kale stood waiting in the courtyard, the first rays of sunlight reflecting off the silver of his cloak. His gray eyes were steady, calm, and piercing all at once. He did not speak, yet his presence was enough to steady Alara's own racing heart. They had grown together in the catacombs, surviving Morgana's shadows, learning to trust each other in a way neither had expected. "We must end this," Kale said finally, his voice low but firm. "Morgana seeks more than fear, she seeks control, and if we hesitate she will claim more than the court, she will claim us." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. She had spent so long hiding behind stories and rumors, protecting herself from those who wished to claim her. But now, with Kale beside her, she realized that protection was not enough. Courage and love were the only weapons strong enough to face Morgana. They moved to the edge of the palace forest, where the mist clung thickly to the trees. The air was alive with magic, a tension that made the hair on Alara's arms stand on end. Somewhere within the depths of the woods, Morgana waited, her presence twisting the shadows, drawing them toward her like obedient servants. As they approached the heart of the forest, the temperature dropped. Mist thickened into an almost tangible curtain, and the shadows moved more deliberately, whispering doubts and fears meant to unsettle the bravest soul. Alara gripped Kale's hand, feeling a surge of warmth and strength. "You are stronger than the lies," Kale said quietly. "Believe in yourself. I believe in you." The words were simple, yet they struck deeper than any magic spell could. For the first time, Alara realized that courage was not measured by the absence of fear, but by the willingness to face it. Her stories, her masks, her whispered rumors, all had shielded her for years, but now they had no place here. Only truth, only resolve, only heart. The clearing ahead shimmered with an eerie light. Morgana appeared at its center, draped in dark silk, her eyes gleaming like shards of ice. Shadows moved at her command, forming shapes that were part beast, part phantom. Yet despite her fearsome appearance, Alara felt no panic. She had faced darkness before, and now she had Kale. "You think you are ready," Morgana's voice echoed through the clearing, melodic and cruel. "You have survived shadows, little one, but can you survive truth?" Alara lifted her chin, her dagger ready, her heart steady. "I do not hide behind stories anymore. I face the truth, and I choose it willingly." Kale's hand brushed hers, a silent affirmation. Together they stepped forward, moving as one, confronting the shadows that Morgana unleashed. The battle began. Shadows twisted and lunged, their forms shifting in impossible ways, trying to separate them, trying to make fear take root in their hearts. Kale's power flowed around them like a shield, holding the forms at bay. Alara's movements were precise, not relying on strength alone, but on focus, courage, and the lessons she had learned about trust and resilience. Then Morgana moved closer, her voice cutting through the clash of shadows. You think courage alone can save you, she whispered. Even love can be a prison if you do not wield it wisely. Alara's heart faltered for a moment, not from fear, but from recognition. Love had always been a trap she had avoided. It had always been something to fear, something that could make her vulnerable. But now she felt it not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. Her bond with Kale was not a chain, it was a lifeline. I choose love, she said, her voice steady, carrying through the mist. I choose it willingly, and no shadow, no curse can take it from me. Morgana's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She had underestimated the power of a heart that faced the truth with courage and trust. Kale stepped beside Alara, his presence amplifying the strength she had summoned. Together, they became a force that Morgana's shadows could not withstand. The final surge of shadows broke against their combined will. Morgana shrieked, the sound echoing like breaking glass through the clearing. Magic swirled around her, but Alara stepped forward, lifting her dagger not to strike, but to focus her own energy, her courage, and her unwavering choice. A beam of light, born of their trust and unity, cut through the darkness. Morgana stumbled, her form flickering like a candle in wind. "This cannot be," she whispered before vanishing into the mist, leaving only a faint shimmer behind. The shadows dissolved, leaving the clearing silent, bathed in the soft light of dawn. Alara exhaled, her body trembling but her heart steady. She had faced the labyrinth of fear, of doubt, and of shadow, and emerged stronger, not just alive but transformed. Kale's hand found hers again, gripping it firmly, grounding her. "You were magnificent," Kale said, his voice low and warm. "Not because of me, not because of my power, but because of you. You faced yourself and chose courage." Alara's lips curved in a small, genuine smile. For the first time in her life, she felt entirely seen. Not as the rumors, not as the clever tales, but as herself, strong, brave, and capable of love. Kale stepped closer, and this time there was no hesitation, no careful testing. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a vow unspoken yet understood. "I claim your heart," he said quietly, "not by force but because it is given willingly." Alara's heart beat wildly. She had spent so long avoiding being claimed, hiding behind shadows and stories. Yet now she realized that to be claimed by someone who saw her fully was not a loss, it was liberation. "I give it willingly," she whispered, and in that moment the walls she had built for years fell away completely. They stood together in the clearing, the mist slowly lifting, revealing the first rays of sunlight. The castle and the kingdom lay ahead, vast and full of life, but here, in this quiet space, they had found their own truth. Trust had been tested, courage had been earned, and love had been chosen, not as a story, not as a mask, but as reality. The court would speak of Lady Alara differently now. The whispers would lose their sting, for she had proven that power, courage, and truth were stronger than fear and rumor. Kale's name, too, would be spoken with respect, but more importantly, it would be known that his heart, too, had been claimed, not by titles or duty, but by a woman brave enough to face herself. As they walked back toward the palace, hand in hand, Alara realized something profound. The greatest trials had not been the shadows, nor the curses, nor the sorceress. The greatest trial had been learning to trust herself, to believe in love, and to allow someone to see her fully without fear. And now, with Kale by her side, she could face anything. At the palace gates, a black rose awaited her, petals glistening faintly in the morning light. It was a reminder of where the journey had begun and how far she had come. She touched it gently, feeling the warmth of new beginnings. Kale looked at her, his expression soft yet full of certainty. "We have survived shadows," he said, "but our hearts, are ours now. Free, chosen, and together." Alara smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "Together," she echoed. And as the sun rose over Averin, casting light over towers and streets, over whispers and rumors, over fear and shadows, it was clear that the story had changed. No longer was it a tale of wild rumors or clever deception. It was a story of courage, of trust, of love chosen freely, and a bond unbreakable. Somewhere in the distance, the mist clung to the forests and faint echoes of magic lingered in the air. There would always be challenges, always be shadows, always be whispers. But Alara and Kale had claimed something far greater, each other, and the certainty that their hearts were no longer prisoners of fear or stories. They walked side by side into the dawn, the castle behind them, the kingdom before them, and a horizon of endless possibilities stretching far beyond the mist. For in the end, the heart that had once hidden behind rumors had found its true companion. The wild stories were no longer shields. They were memories of the past, lessons that had led to freedom, courage, and a love that could not be claimed by anyone but themselves. And though the world of Averin was full of mystery, danger, and shadow, one truth remained. Hearts given freely and trusted fully are never truly lost.